It's Conscious Medium, Brandon Ross. Thanks so much for joining me. And I wanted to do an update to the US Pluto return. Now, let's talk about the returns here for just a second. Returns happen on a regular basis with planets. That is when it moves through the progression to the original position connected to your natal chart. It returns to the place where you were born. With Mercury, it happens on a regular basis. With the sun, it's called your birthday. Venus and Mars have some obvious ramifications, but when big changes happen in society, it is the outer planets that really are affected. Now, the ones that are closest to the personal, Jupiter, are actually life changing moments for you, about every 12 years. So at 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, and then, of course, at 72. And if you're able to make a date, or you've kind of got a double whammy with that one. Right, that's when Jupiter is into your natal house and it's your return, so it's a time for you to springboard into something new, into something that of expansion of taking what you know and then growing with it. When Saturn returns, most of us are fortunate to get enough to get at least two, sometimes three, happen about every 30 years, give or take. So at 30 and then again at 60, and then again hopefully at 90, and I hope to see at 120. That is where Saturn's influence and return is where you have another level of concreteness or structure. So at 30, this is when you have gotten good at some of your career and then you're ready to kind of make a life out of it. And by 60, you're kind of like, all right, I'm ready for a new life. It's no surprise that many of us are trying to retire by, say, 60 or have you, right? Then, of course, you get into other planets like Uranus. Uranus is in 84 cycles. Meet an 84-year-old, know that they have gone through something very unique. First of all, they have gone through the five different, actually the six different Jupiter returns, a couple of Saturn returns. But when Uranus returns, it's kind of where you're no longer yelling at people on your front porch. You're now just saying, forget it. I don't really care anymore. I'm going to do my thing, right? Certain rebellion to Uranus when it returns, and your sage wisdom makes you not really care, and it makes you whatever it is that you're see ride them out, right? None of us are going to see the Neptune return. That is a cycle that is 100 years. I'm that. I don't come across it all that often, but the emphasis Pluto. Well, these are the things for countries to pay attention to. You've seen the video where I talk about the Pluto return for the US. It goes through not one, but actually three. This is also why when you are going through personal changes, the long stem of certain things that you go through once or twice in your life, things like, say, your Chiron return, typically happen between 47 and 52. You are actually in a spot where you are finally ready to do your personal healing, things that you're grow and exchange on. You've collected enough information and now you're ready to grow from it, right? What lesson are you finding? What karmic value you have and how have you applied that to lessons, right? Now, when Pluto returns, it's a 248-year stint. The thing that makes some returns difficult, the retrograde. The United States is going through not only its Pluto returns, but it's a brutal one. It is one in which Pluto goes over its point, its natal point, three times. That's why it's been so significant. That's why it's been so difficult. The fact that the election in the United States is happening on November the 8th, on election day, there is a lunar eclipse. You remember the other eclipses that we had over the past couple of months? Well, a lot of them affected things like Taurus and Scorpio. They are opposite signs. This lunar eclipse is in Taurus. First of all, your Taurinian moon friends, they kind of need to be left alone. This eclipse is total eclipse of the heart. Just play that song over and over again, Bonnie. That is what you're going through. Leave them alone. Just let them get through that day. Let them get through this time. This is their opportunity, reflection, and what in their value. But Taurinian energy in and of itself is a practicality. I want to show you a couple of aspects of what it is that we're looking at here. And just a piece on the personal part of it, there's also the Mars retrograde in Gemini right now. And then, of course, have the Pluto return again. I'm going to take a look at a couple of these charts here. Thank you so much for coming along on this. I hope I did this the right way because I'm kind of into doing one cut. Thank you very much. Aren't we saucy today? I have all these new tools. I'm just trying to figure out how to look at it. So this is the chart of the United States based on its birth date. And again, it's plus or minus a day. I understand that. Some people believe that the country was formed on July the 2nd. Some people believe that we were born on the 4th of July, and others will make the argument that it is a little bit later on in July when everything's ratified. But regardless, let's take this as a near mark here. And this is the chart when you take a look at November the 8th, the actual election day, and we begin to look at it for its intensive purposes. And again, it's not so much about the time, and I know that the eclipse has a specific time. I wanted to take a look at the day just so that then we get proximity into that. It's a beautiful looking chart. If you look at the inside of the chart, this is where the United States is in the 10th house. If you take a look at the sun being in the 10th house in Cancer, we were meant to be part of the world's emphasis on taking care of the world, creating a better life, creating a better world and family, right? Our Saturn is sitting in our identity, sitting in our first house with Libra. We are meant to be the balance of things. There is bad in the world. We have to be the good. Also realized is that in the world. Keep that in mind as we move on here. We also see the moon sitting in the fifth house. Well, this is in Aquarius. It's also in a take it or leave it. It's about a creative thing. And this is why, as the United States as a country, can sometimes be a little cutting and leave. That's the reason why you pull out of places where you haven't necessarily finished the job. Why we come up with a great idea for political reasons, and then we don't always see it through. This moon placement is actually really, really important. And as we take a look at more of the emphasis of these charts, and I have a little bit of a close up here, and we're going to do it this way, everybody. Yeah, so take a look at the Pluto return. Let's take a look at what this is. It's happening in our fourth house, right? So on the inside, that is the United States in their natal chart. And then the external is the transit. You see how we're about to go over Uranus again. Uranus is a slow moving planet. It takes 248 years to get around us on our chart. So, by the way, when we go back over Uranus in late December, that is where those notches line up. But this obviously has a conjunct effect. That is why our um, this is why our Pluto is connect with our Pluto right now. We are in conjunct. We will be direct at the end of December. But this energy, and by the way, our comfortability of being self-righteous, our comfortability of being a superpower, that is what is being in question right now. Because with the South Node, this is making us say, well, you think you're comfortable with being in power? We have a power base because, let's be honest, when we formed our country, Britain couldn't get to us right away. That was a comfortability for us. So we were like, yeah, we're just going to make up our own rules. If you send a bunch of people, we know the terrain, we know what we're doing. Notwithstanding with what we had in Native American culture and everything else, we were very comfortable with taking power, right? We did it under the guise of humanitarian efforts. So this is what we're talking about. And by the way, being in the fourth house, let's talk about that for a second. This is about our families. This is about our foundation. It is not lost on any American that we are going through changes right now because we should be challenging our structure. We should be saying, is this right? Are we doing it the right way? And again, without getting into political commentary, we have justice, vulnerabilities we never thought possible in our structure and in who we are. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a second because there's another factor here that I want to bring in. I want to bring in our good friend Mars. Mars, many of you know, is in retrograde in Gemini. So you've got that communication edge with Mars. So it means that you're going to say and do things that are a little bit off the handle. But in this position, it's actually about the lesson. We're going through our Mars return, and as it retrogrades, it will go over our Mars return again. This is about you. How do you deal with things? Have you ever seen the post when somebody says, I'm really proud of myself because the old me would have reacted differently? That's a great way to explain what happens when Mars goes into, right? How am I going to handle this conflict differently? How am I going to look at things again? How am I going to see things in for what it is and not necessarily get angry? That doesn't mean you don't take action. It just means how are you going to handle it, right? Those lessons are very, very real. Now, the ninth house is absolutely loaded, as the 10th house is in the natal chart for the United States. Now, Mars kind of doing its glance over all of the natal activity is kind of Mars' way of saying we're going to shake the tree. Now, the Mars and Mars conjunct here in the ninth house is really hard lessons. This is a very difficult placement for a lot of us. This is a very difficult placement. This is in your personal chart. This is a super hard lesson, and it's going to come fast. It's going to be hard. If you're doing tarot, it's a tower card. It's right side up, and it's right in the center of the spread. There is no avoiding it. It's going to come for you. As a country, in the natal chart being conjunct to, and it's a wide conjunct, but it's still relevant, on Venus on one side and then Uranus on the other. Let's talk about this for a second. Venus sitting in the natal chart in Capricorn, in conjunct with Jupiter, is really expressing the fact that there is a feminine divine part of this that we have to acknowledge in them. Now, before all of you start to turn me off and be like, oh, this is just another guy catering to women. Whenever I talk about feminine presence, whenever I talk about femininity, I'm not actually talking about women. Let's just get that out of the way. What I'm actually talking about is divine energy that cultures, nurtures, and grows. By the way, if you still think men can't do that, I'm an adoptive foster parent of 3 kids. Kind of kiss my ass. I'm not insulted. I'm just going to tell you that men are just as capable of this as well. Don't think that this is necessarily rise of feminine presence. What it does mean is that it tends to give the landscape of equality of these types of energies. Now, as it sits in this ninth house in the natal chart, it is empowered that if we go the nurturing way, we will be successful. We have tried the masculine side of things. It ain't really working, is it, everybody? The United States is set up like a shamanic culture, whether we want to believe it or not. We think we pulled from the Parliament of Britain, and we think that we have pulled from, the justices of The Hague. What we have really done is actually set up in this 3-branch system of federal government the checks and balances, right? Not anything we didn't learn in 6th grade. However, it is not based on parliamentary work. It is actually based on shamanic practices of balance. One of the challenges that we're also facing is that the people that want to power right now are punitive to the people that want to stand up for equality. Let's sink in, everybody. Punitive nature is not the balanced way. That is actually part of the reason why our Libra connection here is a little off kilter kind of a thing. That is why our Saturn sitting in Libra is so out of balance right now. We are not acting in balance. We are actually in retaliation. And by the way, jail systems, take a hard look at this. What do we actually send people away? And what do we hope happens, right? By the way, the shamanic practice that I'm referring to is that when one person is sick in the tribe, we're all sick. So we look to nurse that person back to health so that then we as a tribe are more, right? Instead, what we tend to do is villainize that person and outcast. That is what Mars in retrograde running over all the planets are doing. It's saying, oh, no, no, no. No, we're not going to do this. And by the way, by the time Mars moves over Mercury, your freedom of speech is under fire. This is challenging how free your country really is, everybody. That is why we are going through the struggles that we are. That is the reason why there is a great divide of Republicans and Democrats. Why it is that the Republican Party actually has virtually no identity right now, aside from trying to tell you what to do. Yes, it's authoritarian, but there's purpose here, everybody. By the way, I'm also not saying that it's bad. No, I'm not supporting unqualified people for running the country. That's a whole other topic. The fact that the United States taxpayers are actually falling for it, that's the concern. But why are they falling for it? Because we got comfortable. split the easy, right? Now, on the flip side of this, you're also picking apart what are we rebelling against? What do we find value? Who do we war like? How are we going to do this? The war on women, there, the war on whether or not we grow and we expand are another thing, right? We want to seal up our borders. We don't want worldview here. People that want to take power want one worldview. That is not how we are built, everybody. I want you to take solace in one thing. Structure matters. For right or wrong, and we can absolutely lambaste people for being in the cultural norm of the moment of slave owners or how other people in the world are treated. Let's take it at face value. But didn't we change? Didn't we grow? When I look at charts like this, I begin to realize that there is the potential for, right? Yeah, you're handed a couple of things that are challenges, but you've got a big task at hand. Your Saturn is in the first house, United States. We have to present the structural world. Ain't doing it. But what we are doing is doing the very sometimes grotesque look at ourselves to test out things like checks and balances. To test things of, are you sure you want to move forward with it? Are there astrological bigger plans here? 100%. Because one of the things that we're also beginning to realize is maybe the way we set this up was good in principle, but these are the places where the dam had sprung a leak. We really truly elected a reality star to run our country. When he was faced with the idea that we were facing a global pandemic, he changed the narrative. He ignored the science and he put everyone's life in danger. Now, I'm all for civil liberties. I truly am. And I'm all for making our own choice. So when said president was sitting there saying, why are we forcing everybody to do this? There was some clout in that. We're being challenged to strike a balance between our personal freedoms and greater good. Instead of looking at it as Democrats, Republicans, instead of looking at it as blue, red, begin to look at it as the difference between your personal liberty and what will allow you free will versus what the establishment and what those people that want to actually negate those things are actually saying and doing. All of a sudden, it just made sense, didn't it? I want to take a look at the very personal moment where in someone's personal chart, and by the way, I hope you tune into Whiskey and Bagels because we just did a great job um, with where we were. Oh, sorry, guys. So many. I want to take a look at where the lunar eclipse is here. But take a look at the latest Whiskey and Bagels. It's pretty profound because we actually go through each one of the charts for the Mars retrograde, and it's pretty impactful. Gotten great response from it. Reason why I'm doing this video is because I feel really compelled the US side of this. Penny and I get together. She talks about Europe. I talk about the US. Talk about reflections of both. Not that we don't have an opinion, but it's kind of we're on the ground looking at them. This lunar eclipse, from a personal standpoint, like I said, go easy on your Taurinians. As a country, this is happening in our 8th house. The natural setting, the natal, or our moon is in Aquarius in the house, right? So you have this air energy of like, oh, I can cut bait, let's get creative, you know, touch a shyster there, right? We're not perfect. But in the 8th house here, you have the lunar eclipse happening in conjunct with the North Node. Didn't you notice when we were talking about the comfortability and the safety? I probably should add this on here too. I was going to talk about it. The South Node is sitting right here in Aquarius, sitting there with in the 4th house in a wide conjunct to the moon. So the South Node is sitting there. Now it's in conjunct with the North Node. Guess what, everybody? There's a little bit of destiny. The Taurus moon is about practicality. It's about the emotional balance of something. It's not flying off the handle. But when it's conjunct with the North Node, oh, does that make everybody squirrely? Oh, and then you put the Earth in between it? Make the eclipse happen? In this case, the eclipse represents the negating of sanity, of emotions on election day, conjunct the North Node, conjunct Uranus. Guys, this is a powder keg. We have Pluto returns to say, are you sure this is where we're going to go with this? Because we should have learned our lessons by now. And if we're going to be in power, whatever that means, this is your time to reinvigorate this, to recreate and reinvent. That is what this Pluto return is. Then you have the Mars return, which is saying, how about this one? How about this one? How about this one? How about this one? Right? Where it's literally looking at how we talk to each other, how we progress. What are we really standing up for? Are we standing up for AK-47s on every street corner because that's what we thought the constitutionalists talked about? Or is it that we need the freedom to make our own choice in this? Are we looking at how we communicate with this and what is freedom of speech? We're about to learn in about another month, month and a half. But right now, as it moves over the Mars return in proximity to here, this lunar eclipse is the spark or the gasoline of the powder keg. Whatever you believe in, this is a time to reflect on the right thing happening. Whether it is in prayer, whether it is intention, whether it is in white light. And I am not a fire and brimstone. Not. Might want to grab that black tourmaline for a couple of days here. You might want to stay grounded because personally, this rips out everything. As a country, we're about to get turned inside out. These are hallmarks of violence. These are hallmarks of uprising. These are hallmarks of self-reflection and people becoming emotionally unhinged completely. This is a time for us to start to reflect. If you're in this position and you are sane, talk in terms of sanity, not insanity. Bring people back to the center. Allow people to vent, but then calmly correct them with your point of view to balance them. Not to change their mind. You won't change their mind. But if someone comes at you and says, oh my gosh, the elections are stolen, and say, I'm glad that we went through the due diligence of and none of that was found, I think we'll continue. Just won every argument. And you should eventually win over every single election denier. Someone comes at you and says, well, this one's just going to do this, and there's this many that, and we're going to gang up on this, and they just want to do this, and they don't care about you. To say, well, I don't know them. So why would they hiring them to do a job? Either allow the sanity to come in with practicality, facts. That is the only way you get through a chart like that. Clear, calm communication, non-emotional diatribes, and pay attention to your own actions. This is a great time to do a double check to see alignment you are and what you want. This is a great moment for where you want to be. The country of you, right? The LLC of self. This allows you to look at and project and protect what you're about. This isn't the day to launch a blog. This is a time to begin the right one. This is a great time to exercise how you want things to look in the future and why it is that you grow. You know, sitting here in the 8th house, this is an opportunity for the United States. This eclipse is, and it is allowing you to be able to reflect on what you're emotional about. What is the United States to taking the emotions out of this? How do we want to regenerate this? By the way, the eighth house, Scorpio, ruling planet is Pluto. You guys sensing his theme yet? I sure am. This eclipse is saying if we take away practicality, we take away emotional balance of a Taurinian, albeit sometimes jealous, they really got their act together otherwise. Now let's put the planet right in between the sun and the moon and let's darken that moon. Let's show them the shadow side. Let's take away that stability, that practicality that Turanians tend to have. And let's see what happens. What are we going to recreate? This is how we grow. November 8th is going to be a day that lives nothing short. The numerology of the day, my math is correct, brings us to a 1, brings 7, which is divine guidance. What are we actually made of? What are we going to listen to? By the way, divine guidance, not in a book that's written that we actually. Divine guidance is not your Sunday morning preacher in a pulpit talking trash about the other candidates. Divine guidance is not calling out that the Speaker of the House's husband gets hit over the head with a hammer and that's karmic and he better watch out and you might defend it. Pay attention to stuff like that. It's time to really look at the angle of how people act and react and begin to use the astrology here. Use the astrology in your decision making. Pay attention to your intuitive value. Pay attention to what your gut is telling you and allow it to provide for you. Throat chakra. When you get validation back down to your solar plexus, that is when your heart is protected on what actions you took or as a country we start to learn because we don't understand balance. We don't understand justice. We certainly don't understand what power is, how we use it. Have you ever seen a person grow up right before you? They understand what power is. They understand what connection is. And most importantly, they grow. This is an opportunity to grow the hell up. Again, I'm not a fire and brimstone reader, but at the same time, I do know that we have some troublesome times right in front. This is why when I give you the heart tap, this is the you can give anyone. What you're doing is you're telling them that you care and love for them. You're also reminding them. I want to thank you all for being part of my journey for today. Hope you guys find this stuff great. Thanks again to the sponsors, the links below. Tarot class starts next week. I'm in Florida this weekend. I'm getting this video up and out right away. Can't wait to see my friends near Clearwater, St. Argo. It's an amazing time for me. I'm loving this connection with people. I'm doing it the right way. Thanks again for tuning in. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe. Become a member. Oh, and by the way, get the 30-day challenge to your inbox every day. It's kind of fun. 30-day meditation challenge. And also the tarot class starts next week. Jump into that as well. I'll have all the links below. Thank you guys so much. And remember, keep